Okay, good afternoon. I'm Evans. It's my pleasure to be here. So I'm going to talk to you more about product design in this space. You're aspiring entrepreneurs, so I hope one of the most important things as entrepreneurs is to understand your consumers, understand how you serve them, and understand the technology that impact your product and your consumers. So this is first time doing this talk, and it's going to be a different format. I hope you participate, engage with me today. So I'm not going to bore you with details. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. What I want you to do is engage with me, answer, participate, think about, what once you're done with this class, as you go out into the real world, pursue an entrepreneurial career, what kind of products you want to build, how you want to service your customers. And I believe that's the best way to learn. Because in this space, there's so much baked-in assumptions, conventional wisdoms. And years later, what we have accomplished as this industry is, to be frank, very little. It's reached a lot of early adopters, a lot of DJs, create a number of casinos. Let's move beyond that. So really, really want you to think, activate, and see if we can learn something from today's lecture. So the thing I'm going to focus on is tokens. Token is the fundamental building block for crypto, for Web3. Raise a hand if you want to share your thoughts when people talk about tokens. What image comes to mind when you think about it? Anybody? Yes?
Like some sort of currency.
Okay, can be a currency. Anybody else?
A chip at a casino.
A chip at a casino can be a token. Anyone else? Jump in. Right, so by and large, in this space, when we talk about tokens, there's two things, right? It represents assets of some sort, right? It could be native, right? If you're using Ethereum, ETH is a token. That's, people try to have different categories of that, but they're all tokens. It's money, it's some sort of security because you have ownership in something. SEC would love this definition, everything is security. But, they are actually security tokens. NFT is an example of a token, right? It represents ownership in something, right? JPEG, art, music, whatever. Utility, right? Proof of membership, token-gated economy. That's an example of utility token. Can be a ticket, right? People are thinking about disrupting, changing the ticketing industry with tokens, right? A different way, right? More easy to authenticate, right? So that's an example. Voting power, right? So if you have a governance token in Uniswap, you're supposed to be able to change how Uniswap team, where they launch the next instance of Uniswap, what they support, what they do with their tokens, whatever, lots of things, what they do with the treasury. So by and large, these are the two, assets and utility. They capture value. They're static and immutable. That's good. Right? Once you create them, they don't change. They're there, right? You have a right, this number of votes to change Uniswap, that's going to stay with you. Nobody can take away from you unless you trade away. So it's a very efficient medium of exchange, medium value. It's verifiable. So that's the power of this. But it's also incredibly simple. It's inflexible. Right, because that's what I want you to think about when you think about product and you want to fit this token into your product. It seems like there's something about your product. If you have product inside your product, you have something you want to represent as asset and you want to fix the transfer of the asset to make it, efficient for moving values and assets around. That's what you do. So NFT is another example of this, right? So can we all agree that right now tokens are very, very simple, right? Once you create them, they don't change, right? And they represent a number, essentially, right? A token is just a number, it's my balance. How many Ethereum I have, how many Uniswap token I have, how many, whatever swap is popular these days, you have. What about NFT? NFT is basically the same, right? The NFT is a attempt by the industry to create something a little bit more complex in terms of token. Because right now, when you think about tokens, there's a balance that they're captured, but nothing else. They're all fungible, right? But if you have $1 bill, another dollar bill, they're fungible, right? They represent that. So NFT is an attempt to create something a little bit more complex, more complex form of token. But the NFT standard today is laughably simple. It contains a name, contains a URL, and URL point to some off-chain asset that lives elsewhere. So think about that for a second. That is extremely simple. Why is that? Well, because we haven't really figured out how to use token in products today, right? So again, coming back to this discussion, I want to engage with you. When you think about creating a product, what problems is a token trying to solve, right? We just say token represent some asset that in this product, in this environment, you want to move assets around, transfer assets around. So obviously everybody sort of fall back to this mental model. It's like, this is about financial products, right? It's a great rail for transfer money around, right? And we just want to generalize it from money to anything that has asset, right? So you wrap something of value as asset, as a token, and now you can chop it up into a lot of different parts, right? You fractionalize it, and you can transfer this and distribute this much more easily, right? Voting power is a kind of an asset as well. All these things, JPEG is an asset, right? You can chop it up and distribute very efficiently, right? A ticket is also something that's something of value. You buy it from somebody else, and now you can easily transfer to someone else. So it's all centered around asset and transfer of medium transfer here, medium of value and medium transfer. It's all coming together. But it is extremely limiting when it comes to product design, right? You really have this thing that's just, once you create it, you don't change them ever, right? That just feels like all kinds of limit. But let's engage, right? I would love, anybody have an idea of a product you want to disrupt? Once you leave here, you want to go build a new company. What is it, the problem you're trying to solve with this infrastructure? Anybody want to volunteer an idea? Yes?
I'm just wondering if it's possible to use tokens somehow with just a messaging app, for example, to make it more secure.
So you're more thinking about infrastructure, right? You're also thinking about building block for other kinds of product. A messaging app using a token to make it more secure. What would you want to capture in that token?
I suppose the messages themselves, for example.
Okay, the messages themselves. That's a good example. Let's come back to that. I want you to think about, is it possible today? Right, knowing what we talk about in terms of tokens and NFTs today, can you actually capture that? Right, because at a high level, the immutability aspect is very appealing, right? If you worry about this is a highly secure messaging, you want it to be authenticated. So that seems like a good example. But think about, is it possible? Can you actually do that with the current infrastructure? Yes?
Just saying quick, question. Why don't we store the hash of the image in the NFT?
Okay.
Why are we just storing the link? Because everyone can just, it's not unique anymore, right? And everyone can just change the metadata and just.
Why don't you hash it and store it elsewhere, and for the NFT to actually contain the hash? That's what you're saying. I guess the complexity is the standardization, and what are you hashing, right?
Like hashing the JPEG image?
But then you need to have a lot of different standards here, right? So you need to have an NFT standard for an image, a JPEG standard. You have to have a different format or different standard agreement among all the players for different kind of product you want to represent, different kind of asset you want to represent, an NFT. So I think people come up with ERC 721, they want something relatively general, right? They just say, store a blob somewhere, a JSON blob somewhere, the complexity details of the asset stored elsewhere. We don't care about, we just want to make it flexible, right? That's probably why. Yeah, because otherwise, they'll have to create a lot of different things. So maybe it's good to take a step back, right? I see people having a little bit of challenges thinking about, sort of visualize what problem you can solve with this. But let's talk about Web3 for a second, right? Maybe understanding where we want to go first will help us come up with great product ideas. And then we can have this discussion again. Is this infrastructure, is this building block, sufficiently powerful for the problem you're trying to solve? So you probably heard a lot about this, right? Lots and lots of definitions out there. People saying Web3 is just a rebranding of crypto, right? A lot of people point to, A16Z being the one that started the rebranding. A lot of people talk about decentralized internet. There's definitely something to it, but then if you ask 100 people who are not in this class, not studying this, what does decentralized internet means, they will say, what does that even mean? I don't know. Another saying is read, write, and own. I supposedly read, that's Web 1, right? The early internet is very, very simple. You use the browser to display information for people to read. That's it. And Web 2 is more about consuming information, assets, content that typically are generated by users. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube are all user-generated content. And what happened in Web 2? Web 2, the distribution of these assets become the bottleneck. The big companies are using the distribution power to squeeze all the profit out of the user-generated content. And now it's funny, right? These contents, these applications, these platforms are being squeezed by the platform that distribute the applications, which is Apple and Google of the world, right? So everybody's trying to squeeze all the profit out of the product they're distributing, right? And that is the essence of Web 2. And that is the thought behind Web 3, right? So when you talk about Web 3 about ownership, it doesn't really tell the story. What we want to get the internet back to is to be a more peer-to-peer model, right? And originally, internet is about creating highly efficient marketplace. So anybody can say, I can reach whoever I want, then equaling playing field, right? If I can reach wherever I want, I don't need a big distribution, centralized middleman to help me with the distribution. Then I have anybody can challenge incumbent. That is the essence of Web3, is going back to that peer-to-peer, that coordination. Let's be clear, these platforms serve a purpose. They bring customer to creator who create content, right? Because you can't just say, I have content. Somebody have to bring you customer. They serve a purpose, but they don't deserve to take all the profit out of it. Okay, so that is the coordination. So when you think about what token is good for, that allow creator to be part owners in the platform. They allow them to have more control of the product they produce. So everybody benefit. So Web3 is about giving tools to the next generation of product builders. This weapon, this building block to build new kinds of product that's more fair, it's more open, it's more transparent. And why is that important? You probably heard stories about articles about somebody did a TikTok, there's like 1 million views and they made $5, $10, right? Because there's no transparency. What effort I put into my work doesn't translate into the financial outcome I want because there's no transparency. Only the big players, the Mr. Beast, the Kardashians, the Taylor Swift of the world, they have established themselves as really, content creators, right? They really own their work because they're so big, they can have the negotiation power to get the terms they want for them. For everybody else, good luck. Let's see if you can get big enough, and maybe then you have the negotiation power to have that opportunity to create a business based on the work you put in, right? So we want to move the internet back to more fair model. And the only way to do it is for the next generation developers to build new kinds of product that change the model, change the interaction model between the creator and the consumer and the platform to be more fair. It's a negotiation. It's a more of, kind of everybody has a piece of pie, more involvement. So that is the only way we'll get the internet back to where we want to be, because this is not a good direction we're going down. People don't realize just how bad things are. The outcome of the squeezing the profit out of the product you distribute is the power lies in the hands of the few players, and the smaller players are getting hurt. That is why customer acquisition costs are going through the roof. People are suffering. Small businesses are suffering because they no longer can depending on the Facebook of the world to bring them customers. The internet is actually seriously in trouble, and people don't recognize it, right? So this is what we're about. That is Web3. So any product should be up for rethinking. It's not just a bunch of casinos or what we're seeing in the Web3 world today. Okay, with that mental model, what we should have as a product builder is, what is a blockchain? What purpose does it serve? It is a public, open, and shared verifiable database where every asset can live on, right? The model is, rather than putting your asset into the hands of a big company where they put it in the private database and you lost control over it, I put on this open shared world database and I have control over it. I know exactly who uses. I know I can take it down anytime I want. I can give permission to only the certain players to say, okay, you get to distribute it. The rest of you don't get to distribute it because you're working with me, right? That level of control, the assets, is what is going to be needed to get us into this more open and more fair internet. And one thing is very, very important here is, what is the role of smart contract play? The smart contract is the magic here that replaces the function that's performed by the centralized middleman. Why do you give away things, information to the bank? Because you trust them. They custody your information. They won't misuse the information. Why do you give it to these platforms? Same thing, trust. Trust is an important thing. You give them control because you trust them. They won't abuse your information. But what if that information, that function is being performed by programs? Then you don't have to trust anybody, right? They do the things that custody your asset. They keep it safe. Then we cut a lot of friction, a lot of middlemen out, and everybody benefit from it, right? That is important because it comes down to what blockchains, why an open blockchain is important, is distribute trust. You're no longer trusting a single company. You're trusting a lot of different companies, all these nodes and validator that all collectively provide trust, right? So they balance each other out. It's a coordination problem. They all want to profit from it, and they also want to watch out for other people who try to abuse their power. So that coordination is important. So blockchain has 3 jobs. It should allow you to model any kind of asset you want and control, manage ownership, right? I have my own asset. What is the ownership? Do I give the ownership away? Do I share it? If I am a creator, do I put it out there, say, go ahead, leverage my asset. You just have to pay me a royalty. Then you can build derivative product on top of it. Or do you want a tight control? Only I or these white list of people can use it, right? You should be able to model any kind of ownership. You should be able to model any kind of asset. You should be able to manipulate asset programmably with smart contract. And then finally, you should be able to process the transaction efficiently, which I'm not going to talk about because we all know blockchain today cannot do that well. They're very, very inefficient. But let's focus on the first 2. So coming back to early discussion, we have established, if you think about it, they failed the first job. You cannot create any kind of asset you want. The infrastructure, the building blocks, super basic. It's a token. It contains a balance. It represents something that's simple and flexible, right? If you think about a product you want to build, they're much more complex. Software today is so complex. Let's just take gaming, for example, right? Any kind of things, any asset, if you imagine, anybody here play games? Yeah, a lot of people, right? Vast majority of people in the world play games, right? You can easily imagine a lot of these games where you put a lot of your time in. I say, I want to own that, right? That character I grow from level 1 to level 100. I want to own that. And think about that character. What does that contains? Lots of information, attributes, experience. What if I have this magic sword? You have a magic sword. This guy has a magic sword. All start at level 1. But you have used a magic sword to take down the boss. That should be worth 10 times more. Is a history attached to the asset. The history is what makes the asset worth more. Can you use the existing model, the infrastructure to do all that? No. Tokens are too simple. They don't contain enough information. If you want to use an NFT, the information is left elsewhere, off the blockchain. Think about for the second. It's locked to the smart contract. The smart contract allows you to do certain things and nothing more. The assets also live elsewhere. The details asset. What makes an asset lives elsewhere. The smart contract look at them and say, well, they all look the same to me. These are opaque. You have rendered the smart contract completely useless, except for locking. This ownership model is actually worse than Web 2. You have, let's think about a smart contract minting an NFT as a vendor. You purchase something of value from a smart contract, and from now on, even transferring this to someone else requires you interacting with a smart contract. If I buy a virtual car from the smart contract, I want to paint to a different color. The smart contract doesn't know that color. You're stuck. You can't do it. It's worse than the real world today, right? So you need to think beyond this tokenization model. Model complex assets, mutate, extend, and compose asset. You don't have the possibility of composing things if each of them, all the data are locked inside the smart contract or off-chain, right? They are not modeling the concept of assets and ownership really well. So how am I doing on time? I have 20-some minutes. Okay. So we talk about this already. The metadata need to live on chain, right? All the information about asset, right? Just as a piece of fine art. When you talk to the fine art people, they're going to tell you, if you want to have something that represents a fine art ownership, it's not enough to say, I have ownership in the fine art. You have to capture all the information and history. Where has it been displayed? How many times changed hands? Right? Has it been repaired in the past? Has it been, displayed as one-word words, right? All these things need to be captured on chain. That makes ownership. That makes something an asset. If you don't have the information, you don't have the asset. Don't have the ownership of the asset. You need to have freedom of movement, right? When I buy something, I'm not always have to go back to the vendor. If you buy a car, you have the choice of not going back to the dealer to get it serviced. If it's locked in, again, you have failed. If you don't have composability, right? If I don't have ability to use my asset in ways, I have a car and I want to put freaking laser on my car, I should be able to do that. If you cannot model that, you have again failed, right? Token is way too simple, way too dumb. People have been thinking about using token to build products, then end up building the same thing over and over again. Bunch of casinos. These tokens have no utility because they don't capture history. They don't give you composability. They don't allow you to use them in ways that you have freedom and control them. So the only thing they're good for is building a bunch of casinos, right? You probably have heard about it, right? All these swaps and DEX and all that, they all add farming, liquidity farming, casinos. NFTs are the new shit coins, right? Blurs, I encourage you to do trading. Who cares about you if you care about the art at all, right? More trades, you get more tokens, and then you sell them, right? And then, oh, by the way, we cannot enforce royalty programs anymore, right? And that's OpenSea. Everybody's giving out about that. If you cannot perform these functions, you've completely failed, right? These blockchains, the current infrastructure completely failed. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our creation. I'm not going to show you this. It's not live, but I want to introduce the concept of objects. Just like real worlds, right? These assets are objects. They're complex. You can create them. You can define whatever the types you want to be. We did this example called Cappy, sort of like CryptoKitty on steroid. We published a type, right? This is what a CryptoKitty is. They have different attributes, and you can put hats on them, you can put clothes on them, all that, all are types. Type is not a foreign subject, right? It's been in software for a long time. That's the interface that describes what your asset is. The metadata is completely encapsulated, right? Whatever make an asset is captured in the metadata. And the global storage is a bunch of objects. It's an object store. And once you transfer object from one address to another, give it away to somebody else, you still retain all the information, retain identity. The thing doesn't go away, right? You're not locked inside a smart contract, right? Right now, you have this other blockchain model. You're tying data and the code protocol together. If you try to take the data out of the protocol, it has no meaning. That is the wrong way to represent assets. The objects is fully encapsulating. If you move it around, it still has the same meaning. It's fully composable. And so you can take them apart if you want, right? It models real-world ownership and access control. Everything's an object, right? So it has history. It's hierarchical like objects. Your parents, this relationship can be explicitly tracked, can be modeled in the object. Hats, clothes, and all that are objects, right? You all have the flexibility to build whatever you want, right? That's just like the real world. Everything is composable. It's maybe hard to read, right? In this case, right, we take this, something that's pretty simple to start, and then you put on hats and boots and suits, and it's an astro hat, right? Why is this interesting? Well, remember, we also published the type as sort of interface. We describe what this object is. So this is important. Oh, I lost a slide or two. So unfortunately, I accidentally deleted a slide. That's sort of the money slide. So what happens is, why is this important? Why is the composability important for a second, right? Think about the minds, what we talk about with creators. I want to put my assets out there. I want people to use it, right? This will be a dream if I build something and maybe a video game or maybe another artist pick it up and utilizing it and pay me royalties. That's called permissionless composability, right? We model this and we allow this to happen as an example. Another startup, it's called, I forgot the name. During the campaign, during the World Cup, what they did is we put up a prediction market. If you get it right, let's say Brazil won, you get a little flag. And then once you have the flag, you can put on your cappy. They never need to talk to us, right? We put it out there, remember, these objects are all typed. The type describe everything you need to do. So they know I can build something that conforms to your specification, and I basically are doing a collaboration with you, right? In our case, because this is not a product, it's just an example, we put it out there and say, do whatever you want. Build derivative product for what you care, right? We throw it out there as a creator, common goods. Just go use it. But think about it, if it's actually somebody want to make a business out of it as creator, you can design this in such a way you have to say pay a royalty first before you can build derived products on it. I can put a Brazil flag on top of it, and if you put a small fee, then you can transfer this asset to the user. Right now, all of a sudden, the creator original product has a way of building a business. Right. So you can model different kind of ownership. Right. If it's a video game company, you can say, okay, I have this asset out there, but I restrict it to only company A that produces a game that can continue to use this asset. So when I release my next game in the series, I can reuse the asset before. Or I can say these companies are friendly to me. Like these days, it's collaborations, all the rage in sneakers, right? You can say Disney can use my assets, or Nike can use my asset, and I allow some flexibility. So now we have the ability to model different kind of ownership model, different kind of collaboration model, different kind of composability model, right? It's very powerful and flexible. So sorry I missed it. Somehow I accidentally deleted the slide. So I'll come back to this. This is what we believe the new kind of primitive for Web3. Forget about all the buzzwords you hear in the space. Roll up, ZK, this and that, bridges and all that. Let's fix the fundamental primitive. Token is way, way, way too basic, way too dumb, way too simple. We established you can only build casinos with tokens. If you want to build something with any kind of utility, you need a better primitive. Something that's flexible and that can represent actual ownership, can represent something that you take with you. If the smart contract disappeared one day, the smart contract get hacked, that asset may still have value. Somebody can write a new smart contract to service the asset. Think about that model. The asset is fully yours and it's defined. Anybody can service it if you want to. Right? The way you can do it is because of type. Type is your specification. Anything that conforms to the type, you can write a new program to perform service on that object. You have flexible ownership models. You can lock it in. You can lock in, just like a current model, but you can be permissioned. I allow you to collaborate with me. Or if you pay me, you can collaborate with me. Or you can say, do whatever you want. Right? Any number of models. Immutable. When we touch on this, right? Assets in the real world are ever changing. Histories are important. Things changes over time. Most things in the world are not created. You never touch them. Certain things make sense. A lot of don't. And also remember, skeuomorphism never really works. When you move to a new industry, new paradigm, doing something new, if you continue to do the same thing over and over, just translate over, it doesn't work. The early iPhone products are always very skeuomorphic. A note taker, a flashlight app, fart apps. It was definitely a category early on. Only until something that's different clicked, this whole paradigm shift. Same thing is happening today. ChatGPT, the technology exists for a while now. It takes an example to unlock the imagination of everybody, right? So that is also very, very important. So fully composable, right? You want object to be able to model relationship with other object, because in the real world, things are hierarchical, right? So we believe this is going to be the new primitive for Web3. So with a better primitive, maybe we can move beyond this casino chip representing assets and start building better products. So we'd love to hear from you as would-be entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneur. Right now, let's revisit that question again. What product you want to change? And what can you do with this new infrastructure through blockchain? Now you know you have something a lot more powerful, a lot more flexible that you can use. Any thoughts, any ideas? Or you can ask questions. Yes, Kaido.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on enforcing royalties or these kind of like programmable value transferring? Like how would that work
Yeah.
in
Well, so very basic. So the objects have certain restriction traits, right? Whether you transfer or not can be controlled. So in theory, right, any object can capture other objects. You list them as child objects, right? So you can build something and wrap existing object. But if it's not transferable, then it's useless. So you can control that way, say, pay me this royalty, and then this is unlocked and transferable. So there's these kind of ways you can program when you define, when you specify a type of object, right? You can add a method, essentially say, to unlock for transfer, you have to pay me certain royalty to do so. That's, I hope does that answer your question?
But royalty is like, that's a fixed fee model. I wouldn't consider that a royalty.
Right,
Royalty is like related to a future transaction, which value changes hand, right?
Well, you can apply the same concept here, right? It's like, for example, let's use a very, very basic today's NFT model, right? There's a JPEG. You can build it such a way the JPEG, the high resolution actual asset, is unviewable unless you have meet certain condition. So you can say, you can program and say you have to, after transfer you reset some field, right? Say pay this royalty, then you get the right to view it, right? These are all programmable, basically. Yeah.
It seems like you're talking about a paradigm shift here, where currently most of the logic and history and everything is in smart contracts, and we keep like the bare minimum in these addresses and tokens. Mm-hmm. In Sui, you're creating more complex tokens and have a separation, I guess, of like code versus object. And the theory is that this, or the idea is that this allows for much more complex applications and products and assets. The challenge here is in the Web3 space, you're trying to do customer acquisition. For customer acquisition, most of the existing network is currently on this old model, which is why everyone keeps trying to interface with the EVM chain, etc. By definition, you're building something that doesn't really interface with, and fundamentally doesn't, and you don't want it to interface with kind of the legacy blockchain technology, which you're saying is very casino-like. What are the applications you think this, like, that will drive adoption here, right? Because you can't use the existing network effects of existing users and existing assets in the Web3 space. So you're building something net new that is much more capable and functional. Where do you see this as getting customers initially in use cases?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question is basically, right, the current Web3 business model is basically catering to the existing liquidity in the system, right? This is why Ethereum is a popular chain, right? Because that's where the money is, right? With this model, do we forego the opportunity to capture that, service the DGens, and where is the opportunity for new sets of user, right? This is sort of related, but actually two separate questions, right? To answer the first one, you can implement the dumb tokens as an object with a balance field. Right, in our world, a coin is just an object with one field, right? It's balanced. So you can do that. So you still have the same paradigm. You can bridge existing liquidity over, and then you can build the same casinos if you want, but build it better. For example, now each pair can be a separate object, right? Now touching one object, that pair is particularly hot, won't affect the gas price for all the other pairs. It's cold. Right, so you can build a better casino if you want, right? To me, that's just a building block, right? So we're not foregoing that existing opportunity. Whether they will move over from Ethereum world now, you have to get an incentive to do so. But that's beside the question. The more interesting question is what other can you build? Anything that's stateful, right? So this is the mental model. Any application that's stateful right now maps really, really poorly to the current blockchain model. Right, because complex software, again, coming back to a video game, right? Video game is very simple, conceptualized, you can think about that, right? If I have a video game of virtual cars, racing games, right? As you level up, your games gets more powerful because you build lasers, you bigger tires and V8 engines and all that sort of thing, right? These are stateful. These assets are changing over time as the game progresses, right? That maps really, really poorly today to the blockchain today. And that's why you're seeing what's happening in the gaming, I hate the term GameFi, right? Because of fi, right? Right? They use the blockchain for what? In-game currency or incentive, right? The more work you put in, they give you more tokens, which has value, and you trade for other things, right? It's basically that model. But now you can say, I just want to take that asset that's inside this product that's currently private, put on this open public database. Use that mental model as just a freaking large database where everything lives up. And what's the benefit? Well, that's where the experiments are, right? If you give this away to the consumer, to the gamer, are they more attached to the game? Do you actually improve engagement? Does it help with your customer acquisition? Is it more exciting to them? And also, all these different assets now live on this blockchain, this database. Does it create new opportunity? Like this is where the composability become very, very important, right? Can I change business model for certain people, right? Remember, right now, for the creators, they build assets for the game. They build for that game. They get paid little, right? You probably heard the Bored Apes, the artists got paid very little, right? Would have been much, much better for them to build a business for themselves, create some kind of artwork, put it out there, and somebody say, I need that exact asset. I'm going to incorporate into my product, right? These are a bunch of experiments. Nobody really know what is going to stick. But you got to give them the tools to try these experiments. Right now, they just don't have it, right? Everything is so basic. The same thing getting tried over and over again, and they don't work. And that is the thing. Nobody's claiming it's like, we got to figure out. It's not possible to figure out. It's too complex, right? But you have to understand from product and consumer behaviors, right? What do they want? Right, coming back. This is why I spent a little bit of time talking about what Web3 is, right? We want to get this world into this more equitable, right? This, if I have ownership in the platform, does it change? If the consumer has ownership in the platform, does it change their behavior? Are they going to be more loyal, right? Another example, right? Right now we already have ticketing, we already have royalty cards and all that. What does that mean to translate that commerce? Opportunity to blockchain. Right now, people are trying this, but doing so in a very skeuomorphic way, right? You have NFT, that's like a token gated, you have more rights, right? It's a very, very basic read-only model. What if it's not read-only? What if the more you use, the more reward you get, or your card reflects the fact you use it more, right? You start have something that's not quite skeuomorphic. Right? This is why right now everything is basic direct translation. I have kind of trading cards. I essentially take the trading card, put it as a digital form, and put it in a product, in a game. What if that thing is live and actually engage with you? The more you use it, it more changes. Right? So it's a bunch of experiments. Let's be honest, right? This Web3 hasn't arrived. There is not a playbook say, do this, it's going to be successful, it's going to be better product. But you got to give the product builders the tools, right? And this is why, we really want to engage with the next generation product builder to think about, right? Right now, I'll say the technology is not serving the product, it's restricting the product builder, restricting the developer. If that's not the case, what can we build? Any other comments, question? Yes.
Yeah, so
Wait. 1 second, sorry.
Thank you.
So when we talk about Web3, I think most of the time we talk about value. So as you mentioned in the talk, we use smart contract to record the value, distribute value. So should we call it value 3? Because the only thing Web3 related with internet is peer-to-peer network. But peer-to-peer network is it's not new. It has been there for decades. And especially with the emergence of AI, ChatGPT, people think we should refer to Semantic Web to Web3. So what is your perspective of this statement?
Is your question about whether Web3 should be defined differently as a semantic web or?
Yeah, so like compared to semantic web, do you think?
I think, semantic web is, I know, it's very confusing. There was a different Web3 back in the days, right? And now this Web3. I don't know semantic web well enough to make comments on that, right? What we focus on today is what problem we're solving, right? Again, the problem we're solving is giving the control of the asset back into the end users, which is the creators and consumer, and make the relationship with the platform to be more collaboration, a co-owner model, and does that fundamentally change the next generation of products? Does it make the internet better, right? So that's the question we're trying to answer collectively. I care a lot less about the term, right? Call it, decentralized internet, peer-to-peer internet. I don't actually care. I think semantic web it's another technology that's sort of orthogonal to this discussion here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I'm curious for your take on industries where the creator-consumer relationship isn't as important. So I'm thinking places where efficiency is really the main aim of blockchains. What does that paradigm have to offer on that?
Well, it's a lecture for yet another day, which is very, very long. So I'm going to give you a preview. The blockchain today is a very, very inefficient because they construct fundamentally incorrectly. In distributed system, you don't do wasteful work. So if you think about it, the blockchain works today by doing a total ordering of all the transactions in a block. That's just fundamentally wrong, right? Most of these transactions have no relationship with each other. So the current model is order all of them and try to parallelize execution then by rediscovering some kind of dependency, either with dynamic or mostly with dynamic means, and that's just wrong. So when you do wasteful work, you put yourself in a very, very difficult situation in the system because you have to keep everything in memory, right? Which means you're forcing into a very, very large, kind of big machine with a lot of shared memory. You can only scale with Moore's law, right? So you're dead, right? So blockchain today is highly inefficient. And it's just built wrong. And also the way to address scalability is not really coming from a product-centric point of view. Why do you want to solve scalability? You really should be thinking about elasticity of supply and demand. That is the problem you want to solve. Today, if you use Facebook, TikTok, these big Web2 infrastructure, or you're building on Amazon and all that, you don't ever think about they run out of capacity, right? Because capacity is elastic. Web3 has to be the same. Otherwise, you'll never be able to build products, right? Imagine you're building a product on Ethereum. And it's humming along, it's doing well because you built great product. Boy, do a land sale. Guess what's happening? Your chain's fees spike by 100x. Same thing with Polygon, right? Just Google Polygon Sunflower. Your business dead. For that period of time, you may never recover, right? So, long conversation to be had another day. That's a whole technical lecture for another day. The blockchain today are very inefficient because they're solving the wrong problem. They're doing roll-up and all that are trading off composability, which already doesn't exist today, really, for very limited scalability, and the casino gets rebuilt on every single roll-up. It's a long story. So I don't know if I answer your question, but right now there's no good answer because we also our data model also solve that problem, but I won't have the opportunity to go into a lot of details. But the only thing is that we do causation ordering rather than total ordering, so it's not doing wasteful work.
Awesome. Evan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys, we have pizza, and you're welcome to hang out, and Evan can stay for a little bit and chat. But again, thank you, Evan. Really appreciate the discussion on like
course.
rethinking fundamentally the architecture of decentralization.
Thank you for having me.